People think rational thinking is just logic, just numbers, just facts. But true rational thinking is deeper than that. It is the ability to pause before reacting, to separate emotions from illusions, to observe life without constantly being controlled by fear, ego, trauma, or social conditioning. And honestly, most educational systems were never built to teach that. The syllabus taught people how to memorize information, but not how to understand themselves. People learned formulas, dates, theories, and definitions, yet many never learned emotional intelligence, discernment, self awareness, or critical thinking. That is why so many highly educated people still struggle with toxic relationships, manipulation, identity crisis, and emotional confusion because intelligence without awareness becomes programmed behavior. A syllabus can train the mind to repeat information, but rational thinking requires conditioning information. Real rationality asks, why do I believe this? Who taught me this? Does this belief truly align with reality? Am I thinking independently or am I simply repeating what society normalized? And that is where authenticity begins. Authentic people are dangerous to systems built on blind obedience because they think for themselves. They observe patterns, they question dysfunction, they refuse to normalize emotional chaos just because it became culturally accepted. Rational thinking is not cold hearted, it actually creates balance between logic and intuition because a healed mind understands emotions are important, but emotions without awareness can distort reality. That is why many people run from silence. Silence forces reflection, reflection exposes contradictions, and contradictions challenge the false identity people build to survive society. The syllabus taught people how to fit in. Authenticity teaches people how to wake up. One creates workers, the other creates individuals. And when a person finally develops rational awareness, they stop chasing validation. They stop following crowds blindly. They stop performing versions of themselves for acceptance. They begin to think clearly, speak intentionally, and live truthfully. Because true intelligence is not measured by how much information you can memorize, it is measured by how deeply you understand yourself, humanity, and the patterns shaping the world around you. Authentic intelligence is not just intellectual ability, it is the alignment between awareness, emotional depth, discernment, intuition, and truth. A person can memorize entire books and still lack authentic intelligence. Why? Because authentic intelligence is not performance based. It cannot it cannot be fully measured by grades, titles, degrees, or social status. Authentic intelligence reveals itself in how someone handles pain, relationships, pressure, conflict, betrayal, success, and solitude. A truly intelligent person does not just gather information, they understand patterns. They notice how wounded people project pain onto others. They recognize how society rewards conformity more than truth. They observe how trauma can disguise itself as personality. They see how ego manipulates people into needing constant validation. And once you begin seeing these patterns, you cannot unsee them. That is why authentic intelligence often leads people into isolation before alignment, because awareness separates you from unconscious environments. You start realizing not everyone who speaks confidently is wise. Not everyone who is educated is conscious. Not everyone who smiles is genuine. And not everyone who is spiritually awakened is emotionally healed. Authentic intelligence forces inner confrontation. It asks, who am I without survival mode? Who am I without external approval? What parts of me were created through fear? What beliefs actually belong to me? Most people fear these questions because they threaten the identity built through conditioning. And that is where emotional intelligence becomes sacred. Because rational thinking without emotional awareness becomes cold and disconnected. But emotions without discernment becomes chaos. Authentic intelligence is the balance between both. It is the ability to feel deeply without drowning emotionally, to think critically without losing compassion, to stay grounded while seeing beyond surface level reality. A person with authentic intelligence no longer reacts to everything impulsively. They observe first, they discern energy, intentions, inconsistencies, and motives before responding. That silence people misunderstand. It is not weakness, it is observation. Highly aware individuals often become quiet because they realized most conversations are performances driven by ego, insecurity, or unconscious programming. Authentic intelligence also changes the way someone experiences relationships. They stop being attracted to appearances alone. They begin valuing emotional safety, honesty, accountability, depth, nervous system, peace, and spiritual alignment. Because intelligence without integrity becomes manipulation. And this world often confuses manipulation with charisma. That is why many authentic souls feel disconnected from modern society. They see how people normalize emotional unavailability, transactional love, superficial success, and constant distractions to avoid self reflection. But authentic intelligence always pulls a person back toward truth, not comfortable truth, real truth, the kind that dismantles illusions, the kind that exposes inherited trauma, false identities, social masks, unhealthy attachments, and unconscious behaviors passed down through generations. True intelligence is not about becoming superior to others. It is about becoming conscious enough to stop abandoning yourself. Because once awareness fully awakens inside someone, they stop asking, do I fit into this world? and start asking, how do I remain authentic in a world addicted to pretending? An empty stomach has always changed human consciousness in powerful ways, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually too. When the body is no longer constantly consuming, distracting, or indulging itself, the mind often becomes sharper, quieter, and more observant. That is why, throughout history, many spiritual practices included fasting, solitude, silence, and discipline because hunger strips away comfort. And when comfort disappears, people begin confronting reality differently. Sometimes an empty stomach teaches survival. Sometimes it teaches gratitude. Sometimes it exposes fear. And sometimes it unlocks deeper reflection beyond surface level logic. You begin noticing things differently. Your senses heighten. Your thoughts slow down. Your awareness becomes more intentional. Logic alone operates from analysis, but deep awareness often emerges when the mind is no longer overstimulated by constant consumption of food, noise, validation, entertainment, or emotional distractions. That is why many people receive clarity during difficult seasons, isolation, heartbreak, or fasting periods. The soul becomes harder to silence when the external world grows quiet. But there is also an important balance. Suffering itself does not automatically create wisdom. Pain can either deepen awareness or deepen distraction, depending on how a person processes it. An empty stomach can sharpen discernment, but chronic deprivation can also exhaust the nervous system and cloud judgment. So, the deeper truth may be this: hunger teaches the mind what comfort often hides. It reveals what truly controls a person, impulse or discipline, fear or awareness, conception or consciousness. And sometimes the people who endure the hardest seasons develop a depth that cannot be learned through books alone because survival forces humans to look beyond appearances and temporary pleasures. It pushes them toward questions logic alone cannot answer.